What's up, everybody? I'm Yogi Chris, PhD. This is Enlightened Masculinity, a red pill show about masculinity and spirituality. And I'm bringing you another recycled episode from the Science of Spiritual Growth archive. This is a show that I had over 100 episodes from, but I'm deleting the show. The whole show was entirely dedicated to communication skills as a measure of spiritual development. And this next episode is one of my favorite all time across all shows. I've done over 600 or 700 podcast episodes at this point. And this particular episode, the Transcendental Meditation Experience, is really encapsulating my experience getting initiated into the TM practice. And there was a lot of spiritual or psychic experience that came with the initiation. And so this episode, being the closest in time to when that incident happened, really details the experience. It'll give you a good look into the Transcendental Meditation process, the lineage of Transcendental Meditation, and how it relates to IMC Nation and what we're doing with masculinity, this worldwide movement called IMC Nation. And if you hear throughout the episode me refer to Science of Spiritual Growth, it's because it's a recycled podcast episode. This is Enlightened Masculinity podcast show. And if you like the episode, of course, follow the show, leave a review, and I look forward to seeing your comments. Welcome to Science of Spiritual Growth. I'm Yogi Chris, PhD. I'll be your host through this episode that I titled My Experience with Transcendental Meditation. Now, I'm only like 4 or 5 days into this thing, 6 days, I don't know. It's not that difficult of a technique, actually, but I wonder if that's just particular to me because of my background and maybe even my karma. You could call it multi-lifetime thing, because I'm going to tell a story now of meeting this guy that taught me the Transcendental technique. And if you don't know about Transcendental Meditation, it's well known, it's worldwide, it's branded, it's very well protected, probably even trademarked, and was made famous by a guy named Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who is also famous for teaching the Beatles. So he's who turned the Beatles like super spiritual and whatever. Beatles were tripping out on drugs and whatever, went to India, but met this Maharishi guy, and he turned them super spiritual, enlightened John Lennon, and did all this other stuff. He didn't invent Transcendental Meditation. He adopted it from his teacher, who people just call Jai Guru Dev. And that guy created it. He basically simplified his meditation techniques from the mountains. He lived in a cave for like 10 years. He simplified his techniques for the householder, the commoner. Householder would be just an old spiritual term basically for people that engage in relations, male-female relations, which is, I don't know about that categorization, but let's just call it that, right? We have urban living and we're in the world. We have jobs, we have relationships, we're householders. So they dumbed it down or made it practical for householders to practice. And that's the TM technique, Transcendental Meditation. Maharishi made it famous. So another thing that's very, very well esoterically known, let's say, because only a few people know it, but it's well known among the people that know it, is that Maharishi was known to sleep about 3 hours per month. So I'm struggling with 4 or 5 hours a day. He was doing 3 hours a month. Now, he doesn't beast out like I did. He wasn't athletic. He didn't have a lot of muscle. He didn't have that metabolic demand, and he wasn't exerting himself like us who are in the world doing our things. However, he was in a lot of communication with people. I can tell you that communication with people can wear you out. And you got to be real clean inside and orderly in how you communicate. And the more people you manage, the more chaos you accumulate. It's almost like like I've said before, it's like a karma exchange in the communication. And so he went from just a humble little monk to a worldwide phenom, head of a multinational organization. And that took a lot of time. And so the guy that taught me, Michael, was an apprentice. He was an assistant, an apprentice. You can imagine the guy's working like 23 hours a day or living 23 hours a day, inspired at any time of the day. So he has an assistant. He had 3 assistants so that round the clock he'd have somebody. This guy, Michael, was one of them. And it's back in the 60s. Michael is now 73 years old. He's been meditating for 53 years. Started when he was like 19 or something. And that's the guy. Michael is the guy that initiated me. Okay, so what's the initiation process? You pay a bunch of money. I get a little discount because I know a guy who knows a guy, and it's also quarantine times, and so whatever. And it's funny. I paid it in full. It was like $500, and I was like, and I know the guy liked it because everybody else did payments. But then I look at my bank account and I'm like, oh fuck, I didn't measure it right. But that's good. That's like the karma of the exchange, right? freedom from those feelings. That could be another podcast episode, really. The feelings surrounding money are what creates the money flow. So that would be a great topic, actually. But here, so we learn the technique. How you do it is one-on-one, you learn the technique. So you show up, answer some basic questions, nothing too, I guess it would be very telling. There's like 3 questions that you could base someone's personality off of. And spiritual experience. Like, what's their experience? Because you're about to give them the TM is basically a mantra that you get that has no meaning, and some kind of principles that we easily go over in the silent flute, just more and more subtle nuances on how to release pressure inside, how to relax, how to go into a thought or a memory and transcend it. And, the mantra and the ritual, I tell you, are the magic for me. The mantra, because there's no meaning to it. So it's wonderful to be able to hone your focus, but on nothing. So you're focusing on nothing. And then the ritual and the initiation, you're supposed to bring flowers and fruit, and he does this thing with a handkerchief, the fruit, the flowers. He has some rice. He has some like water or oil or something. He's chanting for like 4 or 5 minutes. He's chanting. It's not redundant. So he had a long thing memorized, and makes sense. He's been teaching it for 50 years. So, he was an assistant for 3 years to Maharishi and then started teaching it. And he's chanting and he's focused. He's not intense about it. He's very soft-spoken, might even be gay, just very pale-skinned, weirder kind of Silicon Valley, just a guy that I would never talk to outside. But he clearly had prowess in this area of life. I could tell because of his focus and clarity and certainty, even though he's very soft-spoken. Imagine a timid girl being very certain of something. It's kind of like that. And maybe a little more than that. So he's chanting, sprinkling the rice. There's on the table, it's not like a temple, you could say. I mean, maybe he considers it a temple, but it's just an office space with 5 rooms in this office space. And we're in the back office, and it's just a regular Western table. There's just Western chairs. It's all Western. I didn't know what to expect. You go into a Kundalini place and it's like very Indian looking. But this place is very just American. So a regular table, on it is a picture of Maharishi, and then also a picture of Jai Guru Dev, who is Maharishi's teacher. And teacher is not used lightly in that lineage. They would call it master or guru. And you didn't have multiple teachers unless your teacher said, go study something from that person. And so he's doing his chanting. I'm standing there. I'm not supposed to do anything. I'm just standing there, observing, listening, as open as can be. And I start feeling this glowing presence from the picture. And the world around me, which is at that time, it's just the room. I'm in a small room. The world around me starts changing into what I know as North India, the foothills, these highly forested green mountain, beginnings of mountains, the beginning of Himalayas. And it's like transitioning into that space, and then it's fading back. I'm coming back to present. I don't know if I'm pulling myself out of it because I don't want to be daydreaming. I'm like I'm open to the vision. It's not my first, I can measure it because it's not my first experience like that, but it's of that caliber that would definitely startle me if it was my first. And so I'm shifting out of the room into North India, and I can smell it. I can see the structure of the buildings. There's still chanting going on. It was as if it was the same ritual, but just like, I don't know, 200 years ago in India or something. And, I see the guys with the beards and the cloth over them, and it's fading back into the room. And it's not going super fast. It's like every 5 or 10 seconds, I'm like fading out into this image. Every time I fade into this image of North India, it gets a little bit more vivid, a little bit more clear. And then I fade back into the room. I'm just standing there motionless, just enjoying him chanting and sprinkling some rice and doing some things. And then we continue. And then the ritual ends. We sit down. He teaches me how to do it. I do it. And then, I go home, come back the next day. It's 4 days in a row you go back for. Now, the one-on-one was just the first one. Then it's a group for the next 3. And so 2 of my housemates did it, and then some other people did it. And on the second day, there's the questionnaire of like, how was your experience? There were a couple of questions that were like, would give it away. Why I say that is because like 8 of the 10 questions would be like, how many times did you practice? How long did you practice? Did your breath change when you practice? It's like, duh. If you sit down for 20 minutes, of course your breath changes. But there were a couple of questions like, how was your experience? And I said, the question was like, how was your initiation experience or whatever? I don't know if they use the word initiation. And I said, it felt as if Guru Dev was present. That was a very short answer. He looked at it, didn't say anything about it, really. I told him about the story briefly, I think. And then I also had another experience in my meditation that was way heavy, trippy, where I was in a cave in what felt like the Himalayas. I could feel the presence of other yogis in different caves around in the mountains. And I was deep in the cave. I could feel the coldness. I could hear the wind blowing, gusting outside the cave walls. I was in the mountains, in the Himalayas. And it just came to me in meditation, and I felt it heavy. And it doesn't, remember, none of it means anything. It means what you make of it. If I could just ignore it and go on with my life, and maybe I'd always have that doubt or whatever, but if I don't act on it, then nobody else, it doesn't matter, It matters as much as you make it matter. And that is true of everything you've ever experienced. Now, there's unconsciously holding things. So I aim to become aware, notice those, let those go. That's the silent flute. That's what you come to the silent flute for. But so this thing happened. I share the story of what happens to me in meditation also in class, like the 3rd day or whatever. On the 4th day, he wants to do one-on-one with us again, just to confirm that we know how to pronounce our meaningless word, or maybe some people get words. I don't know. It's a mantra. And that's at the end of class. I fall asleep in class, actually, both days. And I'm actually pretty not participatory in the class. It all seems very basic to me. I go to the back room. We're one-on-one again, just closing it out. And let's see the order of events, how it happens. He says, how's your experience going? However I answer, I'm like, it's great. I understand. It's just discipline practice. You get better. And he says, I had this thought when he's like, I have to tell you, I had this thought when I was initiating you in that first ritual on the first day. While I was doing that, I had this thought that I'm initiating one of Guru Dev's students. And I'm like, wow. And he's like, I've never had that thought before. And there was a heaviness. I allowed myself to feel that at the moment. And then it's continued, especially as other people, especially Arash, recognizes it, because the truth is this guy, everybody's fallible. I'm not saying he's, whatever. It's only his personal experience. He could be being honest about a completely subjective experience that isn't true. It's just, he felt that. Whoop-de-doo. But this is the kind of guy that is real big into not analyzing thoughts. In the Transcendental Meditation technique, dreams are pretty stupid. They're meaningless. Dreams are just stress leaving the body that your mind is articulating as memories and imaginings and things like that you're going to interpret. But Maharishi is like, don't interpret dreams. That's just a waste of time. You're alive. Why would you waste your time living and analyzing what you were doing while you were sleeping? You're looking for some shortcut in life. This is now me teaching. You're looking for some shortcut in life by analyzing your dreams so you can hack the code somehow. And it's not a practice I fully engage in. I have, and I think it's interesting. So I don't oppose it in that sense, but I haven't seen nobody that I've seen that like I looked up to did it, but I did it anyway, just to try it. So, this is a guy I know he's not going to, if he just has some random thought dream, he's not going to like think that means something. He said after 53 years of practicing, 50 years of teaching, he has never said that to anyone. Now, how many thousands of people has he initiated? So that's my experience. So I go there and he somehow validates, or I don't even know if validated, because I didn't think of myself as that. I just thought I had a connection with Guru Dev because it was very clear, very powerful. I've had that connection with 2 other teachers, but those are teachers that I studied and then felt a connection with. Versus Jai Gurudev, I'd maybe heard his name once or something, but like I'd never looked him up. I'd barely looked up Maharishi. I wasn't doing it for Maharishi or for Gurudev. Ultimately, of course, I'm doing it for myself, but Arash has exhibited great qualities that he's attributing to the TM technique, or he's not even saying those qualities. I just see a great clarity and self-awareness of mind and mental activity. And he's not saying that's because of TM, but he is saying TM is blowing his mind and leveling him up and this and that. Some people, what I have read, TM people go crazy. You go too deep, too fast. And, a lot of the research, there's scientific publications by the TM about TM, but it's by TM. TM gets the funding and they do the science. And so that's always questionable, most of the publications about it. But do you need publications? I don't know. That's how science works. It should be falsifiable and whatever. But I'm not afraid of doing it. And so I try it and, we'll see how long I stick with it. I just go present time. But I got the technique. I got the mantra. I've been practicing twice a day. So if you're noticing anything different in me, feel free to say so about that. And that's basically my experience with Transcendental Meditation thus far. Everybody in the Silent Flute and everybody that interacts with me will benefit from the clarity it brings. It's very integrating. I can tell you from my experiences so far, it definitely integrates thoughts. I have done enough sitting and not doing anything, or sitting and breathing, various just kind of motionless seated practices. And the added benefit of a meaningless mantra and the sense, you could call it security, of being part of a tribe and a lineage, that it's tried and true. It's been tested. It may not be perfect, but when you're part of a lineage that can say my teacher is, and his teacher is, and his teacher is, and his teacher is, that's powerful. If it goes back thousands of years, if they can name those people, I mean, it's a game of telephone, of course, but that's pretty powerful. We don't have that in like Christianity. There's not, they have the popes that go backwards, but the popes are fucking pedophiles. It's disgusting. So, it's just like there's one guy and then there's some people that knew him that for the next 100 years wrote about him. And then it's like 1900 years of nothing. It's just people that are tapping into it, but no direct connection. I don't know. Maybe there is one, that's apparently what the Merovingian is. One of the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati is the Merovingians, supposedly the bloodline of Christ, or that's what they think they are. It doesn't matter if they are, they believe they are, and they have a lot of money and power. So there's that, but we don't have that kind of lineage. So it's very powerful to tap into. And it's interesting because the physical yoga system that I practice comes from the Himalayas also. And the breathing practice that I sometimes do also comes from the Himalayas, different schools. And so definitely bringing the Himalayas back, in the Silent Flute, we can go more into the relationship between the Himalayas and ancient civilizations like Atlantis and beyond, really. I don't know how useful that is, but it does. Again, it's like the lineage aspect. When we learn the esoteric history of the planet and I could say where we really come from, it's difficult to prove. But if it resonates with you and it gives you a boost of power, it's like tapping into that lineage. It's that lineage effect. When you learn the hidden influences in human evolution and society's evolution, it's very powerful. So Himalayas are one of the surviving, you could call it like surviving groups of people from that ancient civilizations. And of course, for 11,000 years, it's been one big game of telephone. So it's not to say that the modern people are like that, but there's a clear distinction between the peoples and the practitioners of yoga in the Himalayas and the rest of the world. And so that's a fascinating thing that I'll keep going deeper into. Obviously, my name is Yogi Chris, so I've dedicated my life currently to this. Whether or not I always keep the yogi in front of my name or I'm always doing stretching postures, if that's what you're following me for, there's definitely more posture flexible, posture strong people. there's something else that's going on here. And I am the ninth limb of yoga, as you can be too. And it is the practice of communication and harmony that it brings. It's not exactly codified and spelled out. I probably should, so that I can improve it, because it'll never really be done. But it is the application of what the self-development that you get from a dedicated, disciplined yoga practice and yoga journey, and the application to bring harmony to the world, because that's lost on the yoga masters and the ancients. They didn't know how to communicate with the world. And so they were outcasted, they were shunned, they weren't listened to. And it needed to go on like a faith-based belief system, because they couldn't get the ideas across in that way. You just had to believe them. And that opens the door to abuse, really. So it's very important to communicate, be able to communicate scientifically, step by step, so the person can connect the dots of logic and paint a pretty big picture with their understandings. Okay. So that's the end of the Transcendental Meditation story. I'll open it up to any questions after the recording here. If you're catching this on YouTube channel, got deleted, maybe we re-uploaded it to YouTube, so that's interesting. They said for nudity, but obviously every episode was just me in front of a camera like this, so there was no nudity. And if it's for the shirt off, I mean, that's absurd. It's just absurd for YouTube. They're just saying that because I had some Trump videos. That's why they're saying that. And of course, Spotify, Apple, subscribe, follow, and I'll catch you in the next one. And that's it for now. Namaste.